Probably.
All right, we're up. Eric is here, he's on remote.
Oh, okay.
Eric, you want to say something so I can test our speakers?
Okay, I can hear you loud and clear.
Can't hear him very well.
Yeah.
I guess that'd be fun.
You want to do it? You can read it.
No, I don't want to read them at all. I just wanted to skip on scary thoughts.
The deal was, we shouldn't do that. Because,
That's fine.
you ready?
Yeah, I think we just might be stuck with difficulty here remotely.
Okay, I'm gonna call the order, call order to the meeting at 6:35.
Duncan,
Yeah, if you're gonna sit with Brian, that would be awesome. Or you can sit here with me, whichever. Even it out a little bit.
Eric is remote, so we can take his name tags down.
Okay. First order of business is to review invoices and orders. I'm just gonna go ahead and read through the orange. Orange is a non-recurring, slightly different from the normal. I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and at the end, we can ask questions throughout. Please stop me if you have a question, and we can look at the invoice, and then we'll move on. So Allegiance Trucks, Parts and Supplies, $61.10. Ashley Owen, I suppose, a ski refund for $45. Brasso Fuels, Johnstown Diesel, a total of one invoice total of $12,015.22 with $204.83 due from the village. Another invoice for Town Garage, Historical Society and Storage Building, a total of $516.53 with $258.26 due from the village. The Town Mill House, invoice total of $427.07 with half of that due from the village, for a total of $3,289.14 to Brasso Fuels. Carrie Ferrari ski refund of $87.50. Dean Locke ski refund, $87.50. Fisher Auto Parts, grease and supplies, $242. Fog lamp of, sorry, I skipped one. Fog lamp of $739 for a total of $349.39. Green Lantern Johnson Solar, electricity for the town plus Holcomb, $292.10. Ski refund for Heather Dunbar at $175. Heather Kirkpatrick at $87.50. Hillary Hogue at $87.50. Jeremy Becker at $90.
Beth, before we go on, can I ask a quick question about the Green Lantern
Yes, please.
bill? Can, is Rosemary,
Yep.
can she explain what that is?
So,
The town has a portion of a solar farm at the forest property. And they send us a bill for credits every month. And this is how it's broken down into those three categories. Instead of paying electric bill to the village, we pay it to Green Lantern.
So of the three bills, obviously I know which one's Holcomb. What are the other two? The garage in this building?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
If you're interested in seeing the backup, it's here. Okay. Johnson Hardware and Rental, pins, $16.90. Ski refunds for Katie Orse, $175. Kendra Betty, I guess it's Betty, $87.50. Kim Goodall, $87.50. Lauren Philly, $87.50. Maria Churchill, $87.50. McKinley Fagan Berry, $180. Mormar Supplies, $84.28. Ski refund to Monica Stearns for $87.50. Nicole Thomas for $45. And then Rick Emery toilet install, a total of $552.64, with half of that due from the village. Staples, paper expenses, $59.68. Sitzel, Page and Fletcher, warning issue for warnings, $300. Tim Sullivan ski refund, $87.50. Tina Brown ski refund, $175. And that does it. Back to me after. Okay, sorry, I'm used to doing this
Do
in
we
the
need
wrong
to-
order.
Usually we motion to approve the orders.
So do we have typically a recommendation from the treasurer and or Brian to approve orders? Or
Evan, will you speak up?
Sorry, what?
do we typically have a recommendation from the treasurer and or Brian to approve these orders?
No, I was just gonna motion to approve the orders.
You guys ever made a motion?
I thought we did.
I don't think so either. I think we just signed them.
Maybe I-
Brian and Rosemary and whoever the person responsible for the department is already signing off on invoices before we see them. So I think that answers your question, Duncan.
Um,
So you'll have to have-
Well, I'm well aware of that. I don't, if we're gonna sign the orders, I don't think it's a bad thing to have a recommendation from the treasurer and or that we approve orders. But just maybe,
We could provide a recommendation, or I think it's safe to assume that we would speak up if there was
I feel
any
like this-
deviation.
I-
But if
I
you'd like the
agree.
confirmation that we support it, we can do that too.
Rosemary,
Yes,
have you ever given recommendations to approve orders?
not that I can recall.
Is it implied that when we get them, they're approved from your perspective?
Yes, I would.
And if you weren't approving them, what would happen?
I would make the board aware if there was something I didn't approve of.
Does that feel sufficient?
as long as that's the general understanding, it's fine with me.
Okay, excellent. Okay,
There's some in there. you have to
we
sign.
typically do orders before we get to other agenda items, so I did it a little bit out of order, sorry. But are there any additional agenda items for tonight?
I'd like to add a possible executive session at the end of the meeting with possibly a motion coming out of it involving our current town grader. Our town grader, the current one that we own.
Okay,
So would that fall under the second item of business purchase and sales agreement for grader?
we usually do our executive sessions at the end.
No, I understand that, but is it related to that question?
Nope, it would not.
Thank you. Brian, did you have additional agenda items?
No, I don't have anything that we need to add.
Okay.
I think we've got a comment from the public.
Yes.
I have something to bring up regarding beautification.
Okay.
I can go at the end. doesn't matter.
Let's have you go right after that, if you don't mind. Okay, anything else? Okay, so we'll have you go ahead, Kyle. You have the floor.
Okay, so at the last or 2 meetings ago, it was, there's a motion that was approved to not have select board members apply for the beautification mini grant and their families. I had forgotten that Mark, your sister had applied for a beautification grant. She was actually the first one to apply before you were elected. So I don't know how you want us, we're gonna be going over the grants in like a week and a half, so I just wanted to bring it up now, if we should even consider that one, or So we're sorry, but this is the way it is. So I just wanted to get the feel of the room.
How much is the grant? Maybe I should just give her some money.
Well, it's not for, I think she was on the low side. She just wanted $50 for flowers for her. In the front of her, but so anyway, she had applied before we had put this into place. So
I feel like it's still a conflict of interest because you're still making a decision after there's a select board member on the board.
I agree.
Personally.
I agree.
So I would say for that reason, sorry, but
okay, great. That's why I want
She didn't.
Thank-
Yeah. I didn't know about it.
to ask. No, I
okay.
know you did it. You went to, because we haven't
Yeah.
made them public and even gone through them yet as a committee. So.
No problem.
Thanks, Kyle.
Okay, thanks.
Treasurer's report, Rosemary?
The only thing I have is 2 liquor licenses. One for Butternut Mountain Farm and Johnson's Market. These are for second-class licenses for the stores.
Motion to approve the application for the liquor licenses with our standard verbiage that goes along with it.
Need to sign on the second page.
Is there a second?
No, I don't say approve it.
I'll second it.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Right?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Eric, on orders, just so you know, there's some orders where Duncan and Mark are not on the orders, so I think we'll need you to sign.
I will not be back in town until the 17th.
Okay,
That's fine.
Rosemary said that's
Okay.
fine.
I'll stop by the office and sign them then.
You skipped over the minutes.
Thank you.
Is it-
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. So next up, review and approve minutes from February 23rd and 22nd.
I would motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 23rd. The 22nd is difficult. I was absent. The minutes list me as absent. So as far as I'm concerned, they're correct on my part. But we only have 3 board members from the previous. So if I abstained, they would never get approved.
You can, especially when there is a need for a positive vote. Even if you are absent, you can still vote to approve.
They're accurate as far as my part, so
Okay, so
I
do you have
guess
a motion?
I would motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 23rd and February 22nd, understanding that I was absent at the 22nd and I'm listed as absent in the minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? The ayes have it. Thanks, Brian. Next up is the review planned purchases.
We have no planned purchases for the next 2 weeks in excess of $1,000.
I'd like to hear. Thank you, and administrators report.
All right, so first up is a discussion on masking procedures for municipal services in municipal buildings. The employees in the municipal offices I've spoken to, and we have a pretty specific request of, we would like to generally eliminate the masking requirements in the office. We would like to continue to ask guests, in particular visiting researchers, to wear masks. Our assumption is that they are out visiting more communities. They may have been to a community with a higher transmission rate than ours. And when we were dealing with folks like that, we would also wear masks. But on a routine basis, when it's just employees in the office, we think that we're pretty comfortable with each other and not wearing masks.
Board thoughts?
And I do have, we'll talk about other buildings and a couple other things as we go, but, or I can bring everything up at once. What's your preference?
We can just deal with it one by one.
Okay.
I'm fine with that if that's what the employees want. That's what I've stated the entire time along. You'll have to check with the village trustees because that was a joint deal, but my understanding is as soon as we backed out of it, it would be nullified anyways. But it'd be good to let them know.
I expect so. But yeah, I've spoken to all of the local, all of our employees here, and they all have pretty much the same feeling.
So if I understand the concept, if somebody comes into the office, they would wear a mask and the employees would also wear masks?
Employees interacting with that guest would wear masks. So if, if you came in and you came to my office, we would wear masks. If you came in and you just went to go research something in the vault, I wouldn't wear a mask because I wasn't working with you while you're in the vault.
Brian, can you just distinguish between the office and the window?
Currently, the front window, the service window, guests are not required to wear a mask. The mask requirement is for anybody entering into the municipal offices themselves.
Behind the door.
Behind the door, yeah.
What about the lister's office? Is that included in the?
If you went into the lister's office, yes, I would. Yes, that would be included.
Okay, any opposition? Eric, do you think that sounds good?
I'm in agreement with not making mask mandatory in the office unless there's interaction.
Okay,
So basically, we'll have a sign on the door that says guests wear masks.
Yep. And, we speak to people when they come in. We don't,
All right.
we've gotten, especially since COVID, the people kind of passing through the office has really dropped off. We generally don't have people just coming into the office that don't interact with us. That it used to be a little bit looser. We knew a lot more. We knew a lot of people, so there were people who kind of came and went, but that's really not the case anymore.
okay, sounds like you have support of that.
The next piece relates to the municipal office. We would like to be able to be more responsive the next time there is an increase in cases. What I would like, and again, I've spoken to the other employees about this, what I would like is the endorsement from the board that we would, if we wanted everybody, well, right now we do have everybody coming into the office, but if we wanted to wear masks, require employees coming into the office to wear masks, all of that, we'd like that authority to make that decision at the administrative level, inform the board of our decision, and then the board can, if the board feels it's necessary, make changes to the policy at its next meeting, but that we would have the board support to require masks in advance of a board meeting.
I'm fine with that as long as we are kept up to date.
Yeah, we'll inform the board if there are any changes to the policy. The board will have an opportunity to weigh in on the changes that we've proposed, but we'd like to be able to implement those more quickly and more responsibly to changing conditions.
And the village trustees are gonna have to sign off on that.
They're gonna have to agree to it too.
And when you say we, do you mean by consensus of the?
Consensus of the employees. I think that that's a good description or a good thing to bring up. And this now is also by consensus of the employees, that not everybody has exactly the same feelings and comfort levels about wearing masks, but we've been able to come to an agreement about, what's everybody's comfort level and how do we support everybody's comfort level in the office.
I think
So-
it's important to state by consensus rather than by administrator, because I think
Yes.
that's how it,
Yeah, there is no administrative fiat where I'm
yeah, okay.
dictating it to the employees. We're coming to a consensus on. The last building I want to bring up is the library. At the library, they are still working on this. The library trustees are meeting later this week. And they'll have their recommended changes after that point. But they don't really have anything to weigh in on yet. And the town garage will follow suit with the town's recommendations in the municipal office.
Did the town garage state that? Meaning they want to have consensus to make that decision within the garage?
They'd be quite happy if we had less masking. They don't have a lot of guests or visitors at the garage. If we gave them permission, they also have a lot more space in there than we do. If we gave them, more latitude than we do in the office, they'd be quite happy with that.
Eric, do you have any thoughts?
The only question I'd have is, what about select board meetings?
That's, the next topic we want to discuss.
You have yours on right now?
He doesn't.
No, I don't.
Okay, select board meetings.
So at select board meetings, we've been requiring masks. I think that's really good for accessibility and the comfort of the public. But transmission rates are a lot lower. We do provide access via Zoom. We've been improving the experience for people attending meetings remotely. I don't have a specific recommendation on what the best course of action is for the select board on this.
I'm curious, I'll ask you and Rosemary since you're here. The consensus from the office was that people, when there's visitors, people wear their mask and you wear masks around them. Do you feel differently about select board?
When you're working with the public, you're a lot closer
Mhm.
because you're like face to face, not spread out so much.
Yeah, I feel similarly. It's a decent sized room. I'm conflicted on this one about, what the best decision is. It is convenient and more comfortable to not have to wear a mask, but I don't know that it's, actually, I know that it's the less safe decision. But it's nice, it's convenient, and the risk is relatively low right now, so it's, yeah, I'm split. I'll be fine with whatever the board decides, but I don't have a strong opinion.
I happened to be in a meeting earlier today. And in that meeting, the president of our company was talking about a conference he attended. And the speaker at the conference was the former, I want to say health commissioner for the country, but I'm not really sure that's her exact title. But anyway, she was a bigwig in the Department of Health at the national level. And she was giving her view on all things COVID rates and was pleasantly, not surprised, but happy that the transmission rates are down right now. But she said that when you look at the data historically, you see over the course of the past 2+ years that every 5 months there's a new variant that really causes things to spike. And we're not quite at that 5-month period yet with Omicron, which really got me thinking, because honestly, I was coming into this meeting feeling like, I feel like I don't have to wear a mask. But then, when you hear things like that and you think about trends, I feel like whatever decisions we make should be data-based decisions. So if we're going to decide something like that for select board, my personal thoughts on it are, what if we looked at the data to help inform that risk that we're willing to expose the public to. So forget us personally, but what are we willing to expose the public to who joins? So I'm just curious what folks' thoughts are. All things said.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Eric.
I guess my support would be for not required, but recommended. And I think if the large populations like schools are loosening up on the requirement for masks, then the small group of people we have in our meetings, it probably is a relatively safe place to be. So I would support recommended but not required.
Might be slightly. But my concern is, I don't like wearing masks anybody else, probably less than some. But I'm also worried that this is a public place. We are public officials and members of the public are coming in here. And heaven forbid, somebody that's immunocompromised comes in and somehow gets COVID in this setting. That makes me uncomfortable. And I wish there was some way to. I would just as soon shed the mask, believe me. It's hard to hear, it's hard to speak, it's hard to hear other people when they speak. But I'm a little bit cautious about abandoning it at this juncture.
Okay. Thanks, Duncan. What do you think, Mark?
Well, I'm trying to imagine if this room were full of people. If all those chairs were full of people, I would want them to be masked. So I don't see how we can easily move from, okay, tonight we're masked, tomorrow night, next week we aren't, depending on the amount of people in the room. So generally my thought is that we do like what we're asking people in the office. I mean, if there was nobody here and it was just the 6 of us, I'd feel comfortable on masks. But I think for the general public, and I would like to have more people here, but I think we should probably continue the mask. And I don't like it at all. But that's my sense of.
Okay.
I've said all along I would support what the employees wanted. I'll be masked for a while anyways, but I have personal reasons for doing it.
Okay, well, right now we are masked under a motion, so I would just ask if anyone would like to make a motion, and if not, we'll move on.
Are you gonna make a motion, Eric?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that masks are no longer required but recommended.
Do we have a second?
You comfortable with that?
Listen, I'm
Second.
sitting this one out. I'm really conflicted on what the best decision is.
I have a proposal. Well, I'll open it up. Are there discussions before I do this?
Well, I'm gonna vote against it.
I suspect I would vote against it too. I'd like to figure out some way to accommodate not wearing masks, but also be sensitive to somebody in the audience that might be more comfortable if we wore a mask. The motion as made to me says no masking requirement, so I'm going to vote against that.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else?
I think the only thing I would say is if we're going to follow the data, and the schools are certainly following the data and getting the recommendations from the Department of Education, they're a lot closer tuned in than we have been of recently. And if they're following the data and they're feeling comfortable with their much higher populations and a much higher concentration than what we experience, and they feel comfortable going without mask mandates, I don't see a problem with us going without the mandate.
I'm curious if you'd be open to a friendly amendment to keep your motion while Lamoille County transmission rates are at a low status.
Yeah, I guess that's a friendly amendment.
Do you have a definition for low stratus?
Yeah, low based on whose maps are published. They're national maps, I think.
I know which one you're talking about, but I don't remember who.
Right, I think they are
The
national.
CDC map.
The CDC national transmission rate maps. Would you support that, Evan?
Sure.
So what would that level be?
It's listed as low. The definition is low.
Low,
That's
medium, high.
low, medium, high.
The hard part is we'd expect everybody that comes into these meetings to check those before they walk through the door, but it's fine.
We generally have masks available. We can ask people to mask as they enter. I could still continue to publish the warnings. I could change the phrase, instead of mask will be required to mask may be required.
You know, put a sign up that says we're at moderate level.
Yeah.
It's like the fire warning sign, you know?
Yeah,
Right.
Yellow or red.
yeah.
We're all comfortable wearing masks, not national executive session.
In the past, we've been wearing masks during executive sessions. Our practice, has just been to be consistent about whether they're required or not.
Okay, yeah. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Donna, do you need clarity on the motion?
No, I think I got it.
Okay, excellent. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
So Mark and Duncan both voted no.
Yeah.
Correct.
We're gonna have to do.
Oh, I have to roll call.
Oh, yeah.
Eric, how do you vote?
Aye.
Evan, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mark, how do you vote?
Nay.
Duncan, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Yeah.
Stays warm enough.
So we can take our masks off right now.
It's true. If you would like to take your mask off, we are at a low transmission rate currently. Okay,
All right.
next on the agenda, purchase and sale agreement for grader.
Are we allowed?
You're allowed.
The audience is
You're
also
welcome if you'd like.
so uncomfortable.
Confusing times, isn't it?
Yeah. All right, so I want to bring up to speed and members of the public. So our grader is due for replacement this year. We've looked at a few different options with starting last year when we started when we were concerned that we didn't believe that the grader estimate we had at the time was sufficient, so we started looking into the process. We started adjusting how much we were expecting a grader to cost and started adjusting that up. We are getting close to being ready to make a purchase. We've gotten 2 final estimates with good options that really describe what we're doing with our grader and what we want to accomplish with it. The other component to this is we've had a lot of discussions about what to do with the grader when we're done with it. Normally, most of our equipment, we trade them in as part of the purchase and sale of new equipment. There's enough interest and in specialized heavy equipment like this right now that we think that we can get a significantly better price by private sale rather than trading it into a dealer. Previous select board thought that was going to be the case, so that was their recommendation. So that what's coming before you tonight is an opportunity to make the final decision on 2 graders before us. In the packet, the grader for the John Deere is about, it's missing a couple of the options to make it competitive and to make it competitive with the Cat and make it competitive with the Cat, and they would be options that we would want to purchase. So it would cost, it's about $15,000 more than the listed price on this quote.
That's for the options, right?
And that's for options and warranty. Or, no, it was more than 15. It was,
It was
It's in our packet.
11,000 for the warranty and 15 for the option.
thank you, Don. So it's 26 altogether. In order to bring it up, those are options that we would want, and they'd make it competitive with the Cat estimate. That still means that the Deere is less expensive than the Cat. Our employees have had the opportunity to try driving both the Cat and the John Deere. They greatly prefer the Cat equipment. It's much more comfortable to drive. Visibility on it is significantly improved. The Cat also has trouble with compacting and treating the road surface on a curve, while the Cat has a problem or the Deere has the problem.
You said.
You said Cat.
The Deere has a problem with treating the road surface on a curve. The compactor that we want to use on these systems, the one on the John Deere is, the pieces of it are individually articulated, so it can handle a turn where the interior of the radius has to turn at a faster or a slower rate than the exterior of the radius. So it can compact, the entire road surface rather than just parts of it, or where we have to spend a lot of time attempting to compact the turns in a less efficient manner. The Cat has better visibility, easier controls, and holds its resale value better, we believe. Yeah, I think those are our big ones. The employees have talked about that when they're in the Cat, they can see the entire length of the blade rather than just parts of it from the seated position, so it's easier to control and safer. I think I've pretty well covered their preferences. We've had some problems with some of the John Deere equipment not lasting as well as the Cat equipment we've had. So yeah, the recommendation is for to purchase the Cat. The current plan would be to make the purchase and then sell the grader once we have the new equipment in hand. The estimated delivery date would be August or September if we order now. I don't know that that's going to get better or get worse as time goes on, but that's what they're estimating for lead time.
Sounds like worse than the last time we talked. I think it was July last time.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess when this was brought to us last meeting, I was pretty much sold on the Cat simply because it was the preference of the highway department, and it didn't sound like there was a big difference in price. What's troubling for me is that 2 months ago, we were setting up the budget, and we did add a couple 20,000 extra into our reserve fund to make it a healthy fund. And the lowest looking out through in the next 4 or 5 years was going to be, the fund would get down to is about 50,000. From looking at purchasing the Cat, because it's all a cumulative thing, we're looking at a $40,000 in the red on our reserve fund. with a cat versus a $14,000 in the red with a John Deere. I guess I would like to see a plan on how we're going to keep that reserve fund solvent if we decide to go, well, actually with either one of them.
So what I want to point out with this is the estimates on the reserve fund and that impact that's in the supplemental material for those of you who don't have that, or if you're watching from home. That supplemental, we haven't sold the cat and we don't have we haven't sold our current grader, and we don't have what I feel to be an entirely flushed out plan on how we're going to sell it. So right now, this does not take in what we would recoup by selling the grader. We need to sell the grader in order to balance the fund.
Also, Eric, with the projections on the John Deere, it looks to me like that's projected, the John Deere grader costing around 350,000, but when you add in the warranty and the front blade, it's 376. They're within $9,000.
True. And
That's why it
There's a-
blows my mind how different the projection is, because it's not encompassing sale of our current one, whatever we get for that, $5 or, you know, or scrap metal price, whatever it be. But it also is not, it's based on the sale price of, or the purchase price of the John Deere before the add-ons. And one thing that I'm particularly interested in is this attachment that goes on the back. Should that be listed as a separate item in our equipment plan? This packing attachment that goes on the back of it. And I say that because, you know, we list the mower for our tractor as a separate piece of equipment. It's only $8,000, still a lot of money, but it's a heavy wear, different wear than the rest of the equipment. And this packer, I don't know if it's going to be different wear or heavy wear. Maybe the town guys could tell me that we should keep it the same, but we're getting a lot more than we have by getting that packing equipment. And I just wonder if it should be another item separate from the grader.
I don't believe so, because they're not really transportable from one piece of equipment to another.
You'd have to pay for the bracket and the hydraulic and everything.
If it's a good amount of work to move it from one piece of equipment to another, if it's compatible at all. I would imagine if we got one for if we bought the cat or the deer, and then in the future we buy a cat or a deer, it probably would be something that we could make work with a bracket and with an attachment. But switching from one company to another, it may not be compatible at all.
Understood, but if for some reason it wears harder and we have to replace that implement before the grader, I mean, we could consider it like replacing a transmission, but it is a separate implement, so I was
Yeah.
just wondering.
We could, that
If it
would
has to be on
be,
a different schedule every 5 years versus 10, I don't know.
yeah, I don't have a specific recommendation on that. We don't have any equipment like this. We do have some equipment like this, but most of the equipment like this has been purchased under the small equipment plan. You know, we've got our disker, we've thought about picking up a rake, the blower for the tractor. We've got a couple pieces of equipment that are reasonably expensive, but we often don't finance them as part of the equipment. This one, because of the nature of it and the nature of the grader, we're purchasing them as one. So
But do we have to?
I was planning on rolling it in as one. I don't think we have to. I think that we can buy them as aftermarket parts.
It would
How
probably be,
expensive is this rolling?
it would probably be more to buy it as aftermarket. But I'm wondering if we purchase it as one under two separate items because of the wear difference.
For invoices.
I've got a I've got a pretty fundamental concern that I think Eric is kind of alluding to is both the budget that was passed and the capital budget that the budget was based on, and therefore the payments were based on $351,000. We're now talking $305,000. That's a pretty significant increase in the overall capital plan and what was budgeted. So we make up the difference between 385 and 351, which the original
Well, it's
capital plan was based on.
357 and 385. There's 18,000 or well, more than that.
The capital plan is based on 351,000. The budget was based on the payments for 351,000.
Without
Capital
the
plan's
sale.
right here, 357. The question is where we make it up, and I think that's possibly in an ideal world, we would make it up on getting a larger sum of money for our current rate.
I just want to also add that, the bid that we got from CAT and the bid we got from John Deere, both have a trade-in already captured in that bid. So if we do not trade our grader in, we lose, or the cost will increase 85,000 on the CAT and the cost will increase 75,000 on the John Deere. So even when you sell the
They wouldn't
Go ahead.
increase on the estimates that you, on the budget impact document that you have, that does not include the sale of our current grader for the two updates. The original sheet did include it because that was the published
okay.
original estimate for it, but the two for the CAT, the impact of the CAT and the impact of the Deere does not include the sale. Those are financing the entire thing and not putting anything back from the sale of the equipment. So
So the numbers that you showed, the impact of the reserve fund were without a trade-in.
yes,
Okay, so if we sell the grader outright, we have 100,000 we can apply directly towards the reserve fund?
yes. And if we
Okay.
sold it for 100,000, that would put us back into
The black.
the black and in good shape now that we've made the additional contribution from
Okay, finding that out makes me feel a lot more comfortable.
Another thing that was brought up, are these quotes that were followed up on? Because there is a couple expenses that would change if we did not trade in.
there.
They said they could shave a little bit more off.
Yeah, and
If there
then
was no trade.
if there was no trade-in, there was some discussion about possibly reducing the price a little bit more. That isn't materialized.
Okay.
What
The
they
question was asked.
What they did include, or what they did do for us, when we followed it up with them, we pointed out on the CAT, we pointed out that the CAT did not include one of our requested features, which was rear fenders. Those would be, I think, $8,000. They're including them at no additional cost.
What's your comfort level on selling our present grader?
I think to make it worthwhile, I'd like to sell it for in excess of. Well, this gets into maybe where we want to go to
That's why there's possible.
an executive session. If we're going to talk about what's the least amount of money we're going to accept. don't, it's up to the board's comfort level if we want to have the
I
discussion.
just wondered what your comfort level was, it getting above 85,000.
I'm
Very
confident
comfortable.
that we can get above 85,000.
That would be.
For
my
it?
guess, too.
I'd be very surprised if we were struggling to sell this for quite a bit more than that.
And you feel confident that you can lock in this price of these bids by just saying, yes, we're gonna take this machine?
The Milton Cat is asking for a signature on the purchase and sale.
But they wouldn't be expecting payment until we take delivery.
I would hope so.
Yeah, we would take delivery.
Here's a question.
Well, we wouldn't pay.
No, we
We're not
wouldn't.
paying in this budget. We're
We
paying in the
wouldn't
next
pay
budget.
until we took delivery.
Yeah, yeah.
If we sign a purchase and sales agreement with Milton Cat, essentially, we're saying that we would sell our current grader to them. Are they okay if we don't?
No, the sales order,
I missed that.
it's packet page 14.
That
it's not
balance
showing
is
any trade
385.
Is 385 with no trade.
You're right. Thank you.
So they are honoring the original price. They've got in the notes here about the fenders. So yeah, we are,
Well, okay, back to Duncan's point. It has financing net cash upon receipt of invoice. So when are they invoicing us?
We should be sure to make a notation on the sales agreement that we will pay cash upon delivery,
Yep.
which is how it's normally done. I don't think they could expect us to cough up 385,000 2 months, 3 months before it's delivered.
If we're lucky that it actually comes by September.
But it doesn't explicitly say that here.
so I think that's something that we can offer as a counter. You know, like I said, Duncan, that's kind of, that would be my expectation, but we should make it explicitly clear.
If we go that route, we absolutely should. I still have a fundamental question about, I understand we're getting more for this grader, but I'm having a little bit of heartburn over why we didn't include that additional cost of this compactor. And do we absolutely need it? I mean, we've never had one before. We've never had a compactor before. It's probably a great idea, but should we, do, I don't know. You guys have probably talked about it before. and
The
it's probably-
idea behind compacting the roads behind the grader is that it saves on chloride, which we currently spend about $45,000 a year on. So if we could save $8,000 a year, in 10 years, that'd be $80,000.
It'll also save time in that when we have compacted the roads before, it's usually accomplished by driving a tandem over them. We wouldn't need to be doing that. It would save us time. It would save us time and materials if the roads are better compacted in one pass with the grader.
Okay, do we have,
Madam
yes, go ahead.
Chair, I would make a motion that we enter into a purchase and sales agreement with CAT for a
Do we have a
grader.
second?
Second,
Any discussion?
Eric, would that be contingent on payment upon receipt?
Yes, that's a friendly amendment.
yeah,
Okay, any other discussion?
That means we're going with a compactor.
Yes,
no, it's on both of them.
yeah, we'd have to get new quotes if we really wanted to throw that out. And I did look at these and neither of them give us individual prices for that equipment.
I couldn't see it.
So
That's,
I'm not equipped at this time to split it out, but if we want to, we'll kind of see how it goes with it and if it is wearing more quickly and if we want to handle it differently in the future.
Okay, any other discussion?
does the chair need to sign that or do you sign that?
It's board's discretion. We can have the chair sign it or we can have,
I'm fine with Brian signing. and we can call
but
him.
you should, if you want me to sign it, you should say that I am signing it.
Do you have-
Eric, what's your pleasure?
Let the chair sign it.
Perfect.
Thanks, Eric.
Get your checkbook ready.
Got my signing handout. Okay. So I think we are ready to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
On principle, nay.
So we've got to do roll.
So
call.
now we have to do roll call. Duncan, how do you vote?
Nay.
Evan,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
ayes have it. Thanks, Brian. Review and act on possible ATV ordinance.
Give me 1 second on the notes. Okay. So on the ATV ordinance, we've had a few discussions on this without particular action. So where we're at right now is a discussion about what are we looking for with any updates that we might make to the ordinance, or do we not want to make any updates to the ordinance? This starts on page 17 of your packet. At the board's request from last time, I included the model policy that VLCT provides, in addition to our current policy. Yes, I don't have a lot more to present on this that you haven't.
So the model policy begins on page 17 and our current policy begins on page 25.
Yes. You know, we've, I guess I can review some of the shortcomings that we've found recently has primarily been that the current policy isn't well fitted for the way that we've been trying to use it. So it does need, our practice or the policy needs to be updated. You know, even to just reflect current conditions.
What do you mean our practice or the policy?
We had been allowing, for some time, we've been allowing ATVs to use short sections of a couple class 3 paved roads. Gould Hill, for example, there's a short paved section
Right at the bottom.
in between where they would go up to access Draglot Road to get onto the Jewett property and down to the Shell station. Jollies. And then more recently, we've added more of Gould Hill, a little bit on Clay Hill and Railroad Street. So that's where our practice is out of line with what the ordinance says. The ordinance, our current ordinance does not allow explicitly for paved class 3 roads or class 2 roads at all. You know, there's some finer points that we can argue about it, but it's not falling in kind of the best interpretation and the best use of our current policy.
So just to be clear, it's our current ordinance.
Thank you. Our current ordinance, not policy. So that's where kind of the recommended, not necessarily the recommended changes, but the shortcomings that we're faced with right now are focused is on kind of those road sections. Our current policy requires members to be, or users to be VASA members. We're not, I don't know really what we don't have a legal opinion on that, or whether that's recommended or not. That's not in the draft, the current draft model policy. You know, we've got a couple of things that I would like to see changed if we were going to get into it and open it up for revisions. I think that there's been a lot of public comment about that also. The ATV riders would like to have continued access. They'd like that to be made permanent. Residents and others are more interested in, or some residents are more interested in either restrictions or, you know, if it could be used as a trial period again.
Are you comfortable that it's legal for us to demand that people be members of VASA?
I'm not.
That we, Beth, you're shaking your head. Yes, you are comfortable.
I'm not, I feel like we should not have that in there personally.
Should not be in there, it's not legal.
I don't know whether it's legal or not, for sure. But I feel like the state law would govern whether or not how an ATV needs to be registered, not us. And
Which
being
state?
associated with a club, I have no idea. I don't know that there can't be other clubs. I would imagine there could be. And therefore, you know,
Yeah, that seems a little bit sketchy that we're demanding.
So Brian, are you looking to see if the board's interest is for you to take a first stab at our current ordinance or proceed with a VLCT ordinance?
I would rather we draft a new ordinance than trying to amend the old ordinance. If the board's interest was in that, I would start with the model ordinance, and then I would, you know, through feedback with the board and the public, start making changes to it to meet our particular needs. But I would mostly use the model ordinance. You know, I think it's pretty well written, and I don't think we have that many needs that really diverge from it.
so
There-
sorry, go ahead.
There has been some discussion about, can we, rather than adding or removing roads to the ordinance, can we publish a list of roads annually that are open for use? I think that's pretty interesting, although it leads us to a pretty contentious fight every year if we're going to update that list every year. But it does make the policy a lot, or the ordinance a lot more flexible if that would be allowed. So there's a couple of questions I'd like to have answered, some things I'd like to explore, but I would start with the model policy, compare that to a couple other communities. I also think there's a lot of value in being similar to our neighbors, so that if you come from one community to another, you're not surprised by any major changes in the ordinance. So I'd look closely at all of our neighboring policies, but yeah, I would rather try and start fresh rather than updating the existing ordinance.
The other feedback we've heard, I believe, from our existing ordinance, if you correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's not enforceable. Is that correct? Or am I confusing that with another topic?
I think we've had the complaint that it's not enforced, but I don't know about it being enforceable.
Okay, thank you for that
I think
clarity.
that's a separate issue which needs to be investigated.
I agree.
Is VASA, do you have to be part of this VASA?
The current ordinance says that you have to be a VASA
So do
member.
you have to be a member of that to use the snowmobile trails or to use the rail trail or to go on, do you have to be a member of that?
On a snowmobile, you would need to be a member of VAST.
That's-
Huh.
That's what I was trying to think.
Yeah, so
VAST.
ATV is similar, but it's a different organization.
It's a different organization, so they don't have the same rules as the snow.
Can I answer that?
Um,
Wait,
Hold on.
wait.
Who's that?
So the VAST and VASA have pretty different rules that apply to them. VAST uses a lot, because snowmobiles are really not suitable for road use, they rely a lot more on trails. So for VAST, one of the things you're really buying is that trail membership. That VAST has has negotiated exclusive rights for public and private lands for their membership.
And ATVs haven't done that.
ATVs make those arrangements with a number of landowners, but ATVs are also suitable for use on roads, or their suitability on roads is, maybe people have different opinions on that, but it is possible to use them on roads. So they don't
necessarily have to belong to an organization.
they have a lot more, if they don't belong to an organization, there's a lot more that they can do. That was, I believe, reading back on the history, I believe that was the intent for requiring the membership, was that the same way that VAST negotiates trails.
It's a little more accountability.
So wait. Too much dialogue.
Yeah.
So we need to make a decision on what we're gonna do though. So where are we going with this? And what's going on with Zoom, Brian? Was first off, I think. Are people muted on Zoom and are we allowing questions on Zoom?
Allowing questions and comments from Zoom is a board discussion. The board has previously not required for anybody who didn't make arrangements in advance.
Okay,
So like Eric has that permission.
right.
I can, if you don't mind giving me a minute or two, I can go and check the.
Yeah,
settings.
please. I want to ask the board what their thoughts are anyway on how we.
Eric hasn't said anything. I don't know if he's hearing this or not.
He's hearing us.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I'm
hello?
listening. I'm listening.
Okay, so.
I guess I would just say that when the first ordinance was written, of course, it was a new thing and we were looking at affecting behavior. Maybe it's a different time now. That was almost 20 years ago we wrote that ordinance. I'm not sure if I lost everybody.
We can hear
Okay.
you. All right.
But I have thought for a long time that this ordinance that was written 15, 20 years ago, I mean, it needs some work done, that's for sure. It is outdated. It doesn't really reflect in practice what we're doing. So we do need to update. Maybe it does make more sense to start with a brand new ordinance. Or I guess it is recommended by VLCT if we're going to allow ATVs, we have an ordinance, but I don't think there's any restrictions from us not even having an ordinance, but allowing, ATVs on specific highways as we deem appropriate.
I didn't hear the last part.
Yeah, can you repeat that last sentence?
I'm just saying that VLCT recommends if you're going to open up highways to ATVs that you have an ordinance, but I do not believe it's mandatory. We could have opened up highways that we feel it's appropriate for access. And from my reading, it's not required that we have an ordinance. Most of the, most of the laws that affect ATVs as state laws, so.
My understanding would be a little different, that if you don't have an ordinance, then ATVs are excluded from accessing town limits.
Yeah, there's a few different statutes out there around this, I believe. Both in the motor vehicle and there's a separate one specifically on ATVs. So let me ask, we're probably not going to solve this at the moment, but is the board open to proceeding down this? Using the model ordinance to get us started? Do you prefer not to do that? How, what's the temperature? Eric says he's for doing something. I think I heard you say, Eric.
Yeah, I think we have to do something. This old ordinance is pretty outdated.
I think we have to do something. I'll be curious to hear more from Brian about what our neighbors are doing. That will be interesting to hear what Hyde Park and Morrisville are doing in that direction, but.
I know Hyde Park calls out specific roads for use.
And Morrisville doesn't allow them at all.
I don't know what the latest vote with Morrisville is.
I hesitate to say, I believe that they aren't allowed, but I'm not sure.
They're not allowed.
Okay, that was the
Yeah,
latest
that would
vote,
just
yeah.
be interesting to me to see what our neighbors are doing. And maybe, Brian, you could pull together a couple of examples of ordinances.
Yeah,
From what I hear, Bakersfield allows local people on the roads, not out of town people. But that is just rumor on the street, and I don't want to stake my life on it.
I think that if I remember correctly, I looked at this back a while ago, it's been a little while, but I think Hyde Park has a policy, not an ordinance also, for what that's worth. I don't think it's an ordinance.
There might be value as well checking in with Newport because they do allow downtown access.
Right.
Okay, sounds like the board is interested in hearing more, Brian.
And
Are there,
I would just question whether it's even allowable to restrict ATV use to only local members and not, I don't see how we can restrict a public highway to just people that live on the road or whatever.
yeah,
That may be, that's why I say it may be.
And I don't think we need to solve that problem tonight. I think
Right.
the question is, do we review?
Yeah.
And I completely concur that it's time for when we take a review.
okay, sounds like review is in order. Neil,
I was just gonna say, back in 2006, when I was talking with Beth Markowitz, the Secretary of State, she said it was not legal to just have town riders ride. Once you open the roads, they're open to everyone.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for
I
that.
think that would go kind of the same way as you have to be a member of VASA. Really kind of on shaky grounds.
We could have tolls.
Revenue. Okay, other comments?
So would we do that? Would we, I think there's some policy issues involved there. Would we add that as a work session item to float some ideas? Do we?
We
want to have a
could.
Committee to investigate, the public's.
Are you
ideas
interested in
on
being on a committee?
it?
Me
No.
either.
But it might be worthwhile. Well, I
Okay.
can, when we did this back in 2006, there was a committee.
Yep.
At the end of the day, most of them resigned. Blaine Delisle ended up writing a lot of the ordinance. Eric, you probably remember this, and I can't remember who else was involved with it, but that's, he took a VLCT model at the time, which has been refined somewhat since then. Did a little mix and match, and that's what the board ended up signing off on as an ordinance, and the voters at a special meeting ended up not rejecting the ordinance, so therefore the ordinance stayed in place. So that's what we got today. But there was a committee that, at least to start with, it didn't last that long, but
I was on that ad hoc committee. We did not resign. We worked very hard. We presented a compromise position, which was rejected by the board at the time. And you're right, Blaine pulled out a piece of paper out of his back pocket and said, we prefer this. So all that work of the committee that was 2 months at least in process was just rejected out of hand. So if you're going to do anything like that this time, it probably behooves you as a committee to decide that you'll actually listen to the results of the ad hoc committee, if you go down that road.
well, at a minimum, I guess I'm suggesting it could and should be the subject of a work session.
A work session, okay. Thoughts?
Seems to be more than more work than a portion of a meeting.
I have a suspicion, yeah.
I'd have Brian do some research, come back in a month and we can discuss it then. And then we can discuss it a month after that. Then a month after that.
Okay, so Brian, you'll go gather some information and I'll work with you to get something set up. We'll
Sounds
figure
good.
out what the timing is. Okay. Okay,
I think we've got some.
oh, Jackie, yes.
Yeah, just to clarify, so where we're at right now is that the original ordinance in 2006 stands as it is. And any of these tweaks that were made a few years ago about going down Gould and Clay and Jollies and this and that, that's over right now.
Correct.
And should that be communicated widely as the days get warmer and like people might not know this?
Yep.
Right?
Yep, that is true. Yeah, we probably should publicize in
Right.
some way, if you don't mind adding that to the list. I'll work with you on wording too. Like we should be
Yeah,
clear on why, not just that, but also why, because maybe to help prevent you getting phone calls.
Well, not to beat a dead horse, but I think the crux of the matter is going to come down to what roads are going to be allowed. And I don't think that's something Brian can come up with. Sorry.
It's in the policy. Non-paved class 3,
It's in our current policy.
it's here.
It is, and I'm
And the
suggesting
ordinance,
that
not policy.
it's an ordinance, and I'm suggesting that may not be the route that we, if we're simply going to re-adopt what we had and strip out, the requirement for VASA,
Mhm.
that's not where I'm thinking we need to go on this. I think we need to have a more in-depth discussion about. I
Which is
firmly
why you
believe
wanna
that
have-
ATVs are here to stay. I firmly believe that we need to make accommodation for them, but I also believe that we need to try and address, some of the issues that people who live on those roads, deal with. So
Yep. So that's
I
why
think
you
it's
want
a
to have the
larger
work.
question.
Yeah, so we'll have the work session. We'll set something up for that.
Good.
And also, we should communicate what the existing policy says. That's an important piece, yeah. Yes.
Primary, I think, among those is enforcement. People who live on those roads and who suffer the noise from them and who make calls are told routinely by the sheriff's department that they don't have the manpower, they don't have the ATVs to go after these people. And so we know that this is a farce, that there's no enforcement and that VASA itself is not capable of enforcing. So until you figure out something to do with enforcement, it seems to me that, this new ordinance is going to be something that you can't really enforce. You can figure out enforcement.
It's definitely an issue.
Jackie?
So
That-
you're saying that you're gonna have a work session, just you, or you're having a work session to talk about, will we have a committee and how we'll go about that, or I'm just, where are you at? I'm not-
It'll be a public work session to talk about all things around a potential new ordinance.
Okay.
Not that there will be, but, what will the discussions be? It will be a public session too, Jackie. Hold on one second, Kyle. Yes, Eric?
I just wanted to add, a prior board had taken action opening certain access for certain highways that may have gone beyond what the ordinance laid out, but nevertheless, a prior board did take action opening those prior highways. We can't just consensually say here that those roads are no longer open. That would require an action of this board to close those highways.
Well, right now, the only legal document we have is the existing ordinance. So therefore, that's what is in force, and I think we just need to communicate what's in that ordinance right now. I think that's what the communication needs to be about.
Sure, but what I'm saying is a prior board had granted access to certain highways, and we can't just say it's undone without taking official action, because I would question, even though the ordinance doesn't recognize certain highways, the select board has absolute control of the highways, and the right-of-ways within those highways can, open up highways for ATVs or snowmobiles or anybody else that the select board deems. And a prior select board did do that. So the only way it could be undone is by this select board taking action of removing access to those highways.
I would agree with that.
I don't agree with that. The ordinance is the ordinance. If we need to have a motion to reaffirm the ordinance as written in some way, shape, or manner, I'm happy to make that motion. But I don't think the fact that the board, a prior board, granted interim or test provisions to, as a test.
And I'm not referring to the one season interim. I'm referring to some of the others that we opened up, like Gould Hill, which, if you read the letter of the law of the current ordinance, it does not allow for paved sections of Class 3 highways. The select board on its own went and authorized that. A prior select.
You have the legal authority to do so.
And I believe it's still in effect unless this board takes action to not allow it.
Your question is very valid. I mean, that's why we're talking about this right now. Is it, Eric, did you have the legal authority to do that?
I believe the select board does, because they have absolute control over highways and the right-of-ways within those highways. Regardless of what the ordinance says, the select board does have absolute authority on the highways.
Granting access for an ATV to drive down a road is no different than granting access to the snowmobile club to cross a road here or use a section of road to get from trail to trail there.
No, I think it is quite different. I think there's specific statute that deals with ATVs that are quite different than that deals with snowmobiles and access to highways.
So I think we're not going to resolve this tonight.
Yeah, it's more
That's
where,
pretty clear.
where's the state law about it?
Right.
If
So-
we, as Eric said, if we removed the ordinance, we could approve road by road right now. No problem, same as we do with snowmobile.
But we can't just remove an ordinance. I think
I'm
that,
not saying we do remove it, I'm saying that.
so
select
let's
board.
do this. Let's, Brian, let's bring this back up at our next board meeting if we could. And can we get clarity on what the legality of former road use decisions are against our existing ordinance and against state law?
Sure.
And I think that will help inform this discussion.
I agree, thank you.
Yes.
One second to catch up with my notes.
Sure. I would actually also just propose that we not schedule a working session until we have clarity on that. I think that's a higher focus.
Yeah, that's. I'll have an answer for that. So, okay, I'm caught up. Our next topic reviewing and acting on our class 4 road policy. So we had a few comments at the last meeting. Find the page number for this. This is on, starts on page 27. We had a few comments on this policy and some suggested changes that we took from the floor. I followed up on those changes, but I ran into a few areas where I don't really agree with some of the changes that we suggested then. It's not necessarily that I disagree with them, but I think there are larger implications that the board should be aware of and should consider. We can decide to make those changes or not, but I wanted to bring it back before the board with a little bit more commentary before we move forward with it. So this has not been to legal review yet, because I wanted to raise a couple more issues.
Okay.
So my comments are here on the right. So on the first page, what we discussed from the floor was whether state statute requires towns to cover, let's see, roads, bridges and culverts on class 4 roads, and to repair gully erosion on hydrologically connected road segments, and no maintenance at all on legal trails. I found some support from VLCT and other legal opinions that suggest that we actually do have to cover bridges and culverts on class 4 roads, but it is not directly illuminated anywhere in statute. So it's the common understanding that it is a requirement, but it has not been tried in court and there is no statute to point to. So it's kind of true that state statute doesn't say that it's a requirement, but it is still generally regarded as a requirement for towns, that we would have to cover bridges and culverts and erosion.
Ryan, how can it be that we are on the cutting edge of this discussion? How can it possibly be?
Every town in the state of Vermont's probably had the same discussions, Mark.
So the two ways we can go with this is, I think the best is one of two, kind of expanding our description a little bit. So the sentence that comes after the highlighted section is my addition, where I say best described in 19 VSA subsection 310B as class 4 highways may be maintained to the extent required by the necessity of the town, the public good, and the conveyance of the inhabitants of the town. That's vague, but that seems to be an essential part of that coverage.
Can I just make a suggestion?
Yep.
Two pieces. The highlighted text, we just remove the words the state requires and just say the town to provide, towns to provide, not towns, town of Johnson to provide maintenance, blah, blah, blah. That way it's not state requires anywhere.
Okay.
Also, can we just specify the statute and not the text behind the statute? That way if the text behind the statute changes, we're just referring.
Yeah.
We're not.
I'm fine with that. And I actually, why don't we strike that added sentence entirely and just change state requires to town of Johnson.
But the state doesn't require
Well, the state
it.
does, but they don't enumerate that
Right.
requirement. There are some other cases related to class 4 roads, but this particular requirement on bridges and culverts. I hate to quote from memory, but I believe that opinion hinges on the fact that legal trails are specifically enumerated as one of the things that makes it a legal trail is that it does not require maintenance of bridges and culverts, which implies that if it's not a trail, it is required. But there's no statute that you can point to that says this is a requirement.
I think you're absolutely right, Brian. It's not so much that it says you have to, it's that.
Somewhere else it says you don't have to,
Right.
which implies that in other circumstances, you do actually have to, even though it doesn't say that anywhere.
Legal advice for the last 40 years has basically been, at a minimum, you need to take care of culverts and bridges.
Yes, that's been common wisdom, and we accepted it. I do appreciate the planning commission kind of bringing this forward so that we did have to examine that assumption. But it does seem to be a well-grounded assumption and have history with legal opinion.
Are you good with those changes, Paul?
Yeah. I think that for now, I'm going to accept our possibilities. Yeah.
I guess what I would suggest is we maybe stay with what state statutes are referenced to, what may be required of the town, or what the town wants to do. But, you know, that paragraph, the second half of the first sentence, which is sort of an opinion, which has been subject to interpretation and legal challenge over the years, that ought to be just removed.
Okay.
That's not really relevant.
He said basically after remove the first sentence, third paragraph, third paragraph, first sentence, remove after the comma.
Yes, it's an opinion.
Yep.
Okay.
And we should just stick to what is a
The whole
state
paragraph.
statute.
That actually was I didn't get to it, but my second option, what I kind of think of as our second best option is none of this description is actually necessary. We could strike the entire paragraph.
I would say we whittled it down enough, we might as well strike it.
Sounds good to me.
You're accepting the possibility of bridge and culverts, you want to state it somewhere.
I agree. I think we need to keep the highlighted.
It's stated further down the line.
Oh, jeez.
We will come back to it. This is under this heading, it's the purpose, and we don't really need it here. I'm going to get to the next part where we cover, or do you want to jump ahead to that part now?
Just cover the first page.
Okay. Second part, under definitions. It's the recommendation from the floor was changing part of the last sentence. It says and are passable by a pleasure vehicle to and may be passable to a pleasure vehicle. I think that that's counter to state requirements that class 1, 2, and 3 roads, apart from particular emergencies or work, are required to be passable by a pleasure vehicle.
Okay.
So I want to leave that one unchanged. All right, nothing on the next page. Page 29, under town policy. This is where we do enumerate our responsibility for bridges, culverts, and significant erosion.
It says that we're responsible for bridges, culverts, and significant erosion.
Okay, we can strike the first paragraph, I think, that third paragraph in the first part.
Okay.
Are you good with that, Paul? Get rid of that entire paragraph?
Yeah.
And you just added significant erosion there, that's. I'm fine with
Significant
that.
erosion is a requirement. That one is, I don't remember the particular statute, but that's related to the municipal road general permit. Add an additional requirement for class 4 roads that we have to make repairs to gully erosion of greater than 1 foot. So if you've got a channel created in the road greater than 1 foot, it becomes our responsibility to repair it.
You know, we need to be careful what we bite off here. If you went up to Cotting Hollow, that's looked like a river bed for the last 20 years. Where the original road was, that goes down to the Waterville side, is totally gone. Is this an expectation that we would bring that back up to a standard?
That is what the state is asking us to do. That is one of the specific, Cotting Hollow was one that I used quite a bit in conversations with the state when they were adopting this rule, that we would do significantly more environmental damage to make improvements to Cotting Hollow in order to bring equipment up to repair some small erosion high up on the road, which was part of the planning commission, the request of the planning commission, that in addition to updating the policy, we should also consider roads that we might want to convert to trails for that reason, that trails do not have erosion requirements on them that class 4 roads do have. So on something like Cotting Hollow, if we really do not intend to go up and make those erosion repairs, we need to seriously consider turning at least a portion of it into a trail. So that is a part of this discussion, but it is not the same thing that's before the board right at this moment. I do have one more piece.
If we were to adopt this policy and not make changes to a class 4 road into a trail in the immediate future, would there be a requirement that because this policy was in place at the time we tried to do that conversion, that there would be a grandfathering?
It would not be grandfathered in, but it would be part of our work schedule. We don't have the expectation legally or realistically that all roads are repaired immediately and brought up to condition immediately. It is currently on our list of tasks that we would like to get to in time. It is not an especially high priority for us at this time because we kind of know there's other things going on. There's higher priority issues that the erosion high up on roads like Cotting Hollow do not have significant community impact, which is one of the ways that we are allowed to assess and prioritize projects.
Okay.
So it is a requirement that if we were able to continue to make all repairs, we would eventually get to that, but it is not a high priority project. Okay, the last change that I would like to make from what we discussed. 10C on page 31. It had said about the notification for non-compliance, said that the notification should clearly state what non-compliance is, and what the select board considers an acceptable resolution. The request was made to change should to shall. I'm fine with changing it to shall, but if we change that to shall, I feel like the word clear kind of becomes problematic then. If we say that we shall make something clear to somebody, clear is up for a certain amount of interpretation. So I don't like saying that we will make it clear to somebody. We will provide a description of the problem, I think is much safer language.
I agree.
So I recommend that we do change it to shall, but then remove the word clear.
So Brian, again on this class 4.
Yep.
Maintenance stuff. What are our neighbors doing?
all doing the
They're
same,
all doing the same dance.
yeah,
I mean, because there's plenty of severely eroded roads.
yep.
in the-
We are still ahead of most of the state in terms of our compliance. We're making good progress. Our next requirement from the municipal road general permit does eventually require 100% compliance. That's farther into the future. The requirement that's coming up in a couple of years, and I'll have to double check what the date is that we will have brought all hydrologically connected roads that have a slope greater than 10% into compliance.
And is that all coming out of, the Lake Champlain watershed studies and stuff like that? And
Largely, yes.
okay.
Paul, do you remember the statute by
is it
chance?
coming with money?
No.
It comes with a threat of them not giving us the money they're giving us.
Right.
It is, they say that it comes with money. What it really is that all of the money that we can apply for now has the requirement of how does this help your MRGP compliance?
Right.
And if it doesn't help your MRGP compliance, they're not going to pay for it.
Okay, so
So I'd like to take this for legal review with the changes that I described to you tonight.
everyone good with that?
Sounds good to me.
Thank you.
I just want to bring up something else that I noticed here, in your highway access and right of way policy, it says that the class 4 road policy governs work and right of ways. And then in this policy, it says that work in the right of way is like sort of, doesn't exactly say it's governed by that work in the right of way policy, but it refers to it, which is sort of confusing that you've got the policy that says this one is the one that handles work on roads, and then this one sort of says, well, go look at that other one. It's a little circular.
Okay, thank you for that. Donna, that might be. Yeah, I am. There very easily could be that I've been too familiar with both and kind of made them link to each other in ways that are not helpful or confusing. So I'm going to take a look at that and see if any changes need to be made to either policy and provide that as a recommendation. But I don't think there's going to be more significant changes to this other than clearing that up, which means one of these two policies has to enumerate that that language and how to handle permits in class 4 roads. But then I will be, I'd like to take it for legal review, provided that isn't a major departure from what this currently says.
I have. I think it's premature to go for legal reviews, and I'll tell you why. And this is just a decision of the board, but I would like to see the policy allow certain levels of maintenance to be performed by people living on the roads without requirement of a permit. And as I read this, it says any person who wishes to perform or arrange for the repair, maintenance, improvement, restoration, or installation on class 4 roads may do so only after receiving a signed permit from the town. Permission for repair, maintenance, improvement, etc. Shall be given in accordance and shall not be reasonably withheld. I'd like to see us, there were some good things in the old policy, and I really think we should, maybe go back a little bit and look at some of those things. I'd like to see us develop a policy that allows basic maintenance, but sets forth a few standards for that level of maintenance. Yet, if you're gonna do a wholesale change on a road, like a major upgrade versus, you know, sort of annual maintenance kind of things, that yes, probably that should require, you know, a full-blown permit. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not entirely comfortable where the policy is right now, and I think it needs more work, but that's just me.
Paul, do you have?
Yeah, I brought that up. I think. We got everything drafted something where we included that option. Yeah, like maybe or other work to the top, 6 inches of the road surface could be done without a permit by homeowners, in case of et cetera. That was struck out by the board in our first draft of the policy. I agree with you. I think that, I mean, first of all, a lot of people are doing that. Somebody got it. Find a way to craft it such that you feel comfortable that you have some sort of control over it, but it won't be very good.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I also think that on the flip side of that, having been involved with a couple of loggers who did severe damage to class 4 roads, you know, I think we also need to have mechanisms in place that perhaps allow the board to require a bond or, you know, something of that nature for, you know, to bring the road back to its standard if the person who's doing the work fails to do so. So I guess where I'm going with this is I think there may have been some good things in the old policy. I'd love to see us get to a point where we could maybe allow people that are living out there on a routine and regular basis to do work without having to get a highway permit every time they did basic maintenance on the road. So I guess, in my opinion, it's not ready for prime time yet.
Yeah, I think that was the intent, if I recall some of the discussion, but if that's not clear, then maybe there is some clarity needed.
Yep.
Donna?
So this other policy, we work on the right of way one that says that doesn't really apply to class 4 roads. Says notwithstanding the stated restrictions on working the right of way, the following are considered permissible projects and do not require a permit. And it lists some things like access maintenance, regrading, resurfacing, repaving that in no way alters the flow of water into or out of the road or right of way. So.
But that's not the road itself, that's the driveway or the access onto the road.
Oh, that's true. That is the access onto the road. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe there are no exceptions for actual work on the road. But this one does seem to at least have some exceptions, whereas the class 4 one doesn't at all.
Well, so Paul, this may never pass. Okay, so
Driveway permit.
Right. So
how does the board feel? Do you feel that those, going back and looking at standards and qualifications for permission is appropriate? I know Duncan feels that way. What about everybody else?
I feel like, I mean, people are already doing it now, but if we make it a standard where people can maintain stuff, we're accepting responsibility without any form of communication on who did what. At least this way, if there's wrongdoing, we can usually figure out what it was and fix it, but I don't think that there should inherently be a built-in, yeah, you're good to do what you want.
Okay, Mark, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm hearing from people that they're already doing this and that so it seems like maybe we could meet what you want of setting some real parameters versus just keeping our head in the sand and say, look the other way. I think we ought to take a look at it. Is there a way we can put some parameters that allow people to? It's a very tricky situation because people are already doing it. If we don't put any parameters on and people don't get permits, what are we gonna do? We're gonna find them? or? That's
Paul?
what Paul
I'm just
had.
curious, I should know this, I apologize. What is the current process right now? What's the block? How difficult is it? What's the expense? What's the insurance requirement?
The work and to obtain a permit to work anywhere inside the right of way, including in the road. The process for that is a permit application. If the permit application, at that point is reviewed with the road foreman. It's then, if it needs a permit and you need to go through the process, you can, file a permit application on something that you're not sure whether it's gonna need it or not, and kind of get a consultation. But you file the permit with the road foreman, you pay the permit application fee,
Which is what?
$75. You then receive a notice to proceed. The notice to proceed gives you permission to do the work that's described. You then, when that's finished, the notice to proceed is returned to the road foreman, who comes back to give you a completed permit.
Is there an insurance requirement?
It's a lot of that is at the foreman's discretion of what's the risk and exposure to the town for the work you're proposing to do.
So the road foreman has discretion to say this requires a permit, this doesn't. So if I want to grade my driveway, I use a class 4 road. Go to the road foreman, he says, now you don't need a permit, okay? Or.
On the permit policy
They get a permit.
and our existing class 4 policy,
Signed.
the board had directed that permits were not required for regular maintenance of class 4 roads. So in that case, right, regular maintenance, you wouldn't need to. It is a policy, not an ordinance, so the board is in their legal authority to make that discretionary decision.
So that's already been changed. This section of the policy has already been changed. Not to require permits.
It would be better if we had adopted it in writing rather than meeting minutes, but I can pull the meeting minutes where the board adopted that as a change.
Okay, so I'm hearing we're not actually done. That's what I'm hearing.
At the very least, it is evident that it is not clear when a permit is required and when it's not.
Yep, okay, so adding that to the list. Eric, did you have anything else you want to add to the list?
The only thing I would just add that, we have addressed snow plowing. We would not require a permit. The reasons for requiring a permit, I think, are good in the sense that we then know what's being done on our highways. But if you look at number 5, it says that will not unreasonably be withheld by the town. So I think the landowners that live on class 4 highways are pretty well, they're going to get the permit if they request it. But it's just a good way for us to know that they're doing something and make sure that, they're doing it correctly.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, Brian.
All right,
How do we come up with a $75 fee?
it's been the same fee for a very long time. I have no idea how it originated.
Okay.
I would just propose that we have a number of items still left on our agenda, and it's 8:30. I have a feeling this meeting could go really long, so I would propose if we don't keep us within the 10 minutes for the next one, that we decide that we'll have further discussion in the next meeting.
That's fair. This one is, fortunately or unfortunately, this one is very short.
Good. So unfortunate.
I had a great meeting with VLCT's new government finance specialist. She's eager and willing to help the town of Johnson, completing our audit RFP and making any changes that we want to make in the future. This is just the first part of the conversation. It's ongoing. I was hoping to have any requested changes or any recommended changes to the audit RFP for you, but we weren't able to complete that in time, so I don't have her review of this yet. So
Of the document that you sent out.
that's the document that I wrote that does not have her recommended changes applied to it yet.
Could I make a motion to authorize Brian and Rosemary to circulate the request for proposals pending any comments that they might receive back?
You could.
Because I think this needs to get out, doesn't it, Rosemary?
Yeah, it's getting, in the year, before we know it, only 3 months away.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay. Yep, you can certainly do that. Is that your motion?
That is my motion.
Okay, do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I'll just say, thank you, Duncan. I with their assistance, with Rosemary's assistance, I'm confident that we can do this.
Okay,
So I don't think if the board's comfortable, I don't think that we need to bring it back again before we publish it.
Eric, you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, okay, we have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
All those opposed? And it passes.
Thank you.
Less than 10.
Took less than 10 minutes.
Woohoo!
Yep.
Keep this trend going.
All right. Congressional spending requests. So last year, our congressional delegation had opened up for spending requests, very similar to earmarks in the past, looking for local projects that they could include in federal spending bills. There was some interest from Sanders' office in particular, but we didn't get the go-ahead on either of our proposed projects. I think we had 3 projects at one point, but we mostly went with 2 of the projects. Our 2 priority projects was the light industrial park and trail program around Old Mill Park and the Tatro property, the Talc Mill property, and the bridge that used to go between what's now Old Mill Park and the skate park. So we had a couple projects that we were shopping around. Neither of those really got off the ground, but there was some interest in them. Those are open for, those spending requests are opening again. Senator Leahy's office is the first one to open up. We've got a little bit of fine tuning on the projects that we've done. I'd really like to circulate, more or less the same projects. There's more updates done to the recreation project than there is the light industrial project. Light industrial project is pretty much the same thing we've been applying for, which is infrastructure to build the road access and utilities to open up the entire property for sale. That would be our first priority. The recreation would be our second priority. I think it's worthwhile to shop those both around because different programs are going to have different priorities. So some people that might be interested in the economic development and other folks might be interested in recreation activities. We saw that with Sanders' office. Sanders was not especially interested in our economic development activity, but because he had been an essential part of getting the rail trail built in the first place, he was very interested in anything that had to do with the rail trail. So that's kind of where we're up to speed, but I kind of want the board's permission to continue pursuing those 2. You would have an opportunity for review and more detail if anybody picked up these projects, but I do intend to spend a decent amount of time, especially with the light industrial park, making these applications.
For the light industrial park, we've put that out there quite a few times at this point.
Yep.
With very little response from what I recall in all cases. Is there something we need to do differently to get more of an appetite for that, considering it's clearly on the minds of everybody in town at this point?
I think there are a few things that we can look at for kind of adapting and attacking that one a little bit differently. I don't think this is the I don't think this is the venue for making those changes. That I think that possibly reducing the scope and tightening a few things up could be more appetizing for some of the other grant programs. What we've heard in conversation with Senator Leahy's office is one of the things that makes the rec example less competitive is they actually want a bigger project to get behind. That they don't want something as small as that. They want a more expensive and a more impactful project. So
We can accommodate.
yeah.
Is that what the second to last page of the packet is?
Yeah.
They're looking for $360,000 for engineering and marketing. That's not there. Yeah, I'm fine with those two projects because they hit both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Question is the board fine with those two projects, right?
That is the question.
To Beth's point,
I still have a comment. Just go ahead.
well, to Beth's point, trying to make a more attractive project. This is a question, I guess. At one point, relatively early stages of the planning, there is a lot as you go up the road directly behind what used to be the old Bradley House, which had various potential different uses, including office, retail office space, but it also had a potential component of some form of affordable housing or elderly housing, or would that make the project more attractive? Would having some sort of a housing component in there make the project more attractive?
It could for some applications. There was something that we applied for recently that specifically ruled out a housing component. So it depends on what we're going for. Including housing would make us more competitive on some applications and less on others. We have generally not been including a housing component with this for our application. Yeah, we've got to have our more detailed discussion about ARPA funds soon. That is a major component in that could be a major component in the success of searching for funding this year.
Any application.
There's a strong case to be made that we can go for the Northern Borders Regional Commission and the Economic Development Authority have partnered on a number of projects. And that would pay for quite a bit. We need a cash match in order to be competitive on that. But if we decide that there's a few decisions that have to be made, but the ARPA funds could be used for that. If they're recovered as lost revenue, and then we use the lost revenue to invest in this.
Mark?
I just am curious about the possible bridge across the river. I assume the planning commission and people really dug into this, because I see that as something that will just hurt our downtown. That people will just come off the rail trail, go to Jolly's, go to the bathroom, eat food, and not come downtown. But I understand snow machiners it's a place where they can come and get gas. But if I'm pedaling down the rail trail and I want to go pee, or I want some food, and there's a bridge right here versus coming down Railroad Street, I zoom over to Jolly's and I never visit downtown. And have you folks, have other people?
Yeah, the question is, where did this come from?
This has been the planning for this right now is coming from assistance with Casey Romero. This as a concept, there used to be a bridge there, and we've heard from a few different groups about a desire to bring something like that back. We've talked about it recently with skate park, their cycling developments over at the skate park, that they would like to bring in more cyclists, make that a little bit easier to access from the downtown and from the rest of the community and the rail trail. We've had a couple discussions about dog park and some of the property that the town owns in that area on Weston Street being a good location for a dog park, except for its pedestrian accessibility is not very good. I don't believe that we had a lot of discussions about the commercial impact of creating that bridge.
I would be very concerned about that because I was involved in the legislature when we designated that as a rail trail. And I remember the snowmobile, I think it was a suspension bridge. Does anyone remember? I think it was like a suspension bridge across there. But I would just be very concerned that it's just turns out to be a funnel for people that are pedaling the rail trail all summer to come to Jolly's and not come to our village. So you may like the project. I'm not that excited about it because I would want to know that people would come into our village. That's really important to me.
The project is more than just the bridge, Brian.
Yes, it is.
Can you speak to that?
So other parts is some of the other central parts of this is a different avenue for branding and marketing. One of the proposed kind of branding opportunities and slogans for Johnson is where the trails come together. So part of this proposal would be to, with the addition of that connection and also using some of this to help develop additional cycling trails in the Tatro property, the old Talc Mill property.
I mean, it's like mountain bike trails or
Multi-use trails. There hasn't been any, at this point, I think where that stands is Lisa, our rec coordinator, is going to be going to the village to ask their permission for an Act 250 amendment requesting this. That it's still in early enough stages that if we don't receive permission for it, there's not a lot of traction there. But it will eventually need funding if it's successful.
Eric?
Yeah, I think where the bridge discussion came up is we had this same discussion about a year ago. There was all this money available and we had like 5 days to brainstorm and throw out some ideas. And that's where the connecting bridge between two large recreational areas, the skate park and the mill park, that's where the concept for the bridge really came from. The best point on the light industrial park, the Jewett property, it does feel like it's stalled. There's no way of knowing, but if we'd had somebody in the position that Leah held, would we still be in this same place, or would we have been able to move it along where somebody is focusing on that? And I would just remind the board that the voters did approve that 40,000 for economic development. So with that money, and if the village does step up and contribute as well, we may have that person to put focus on some of these projects and really drive them. I mean, not to take anything from Brian, but he has a lot of things, the day-to-day work that just takes his focus, and having somebody dedicated to this long-range looking, we may have that in the very near future.
Kyle?
Yeah, I asked where this came from, or who put the work into it, just because I feel like there needs to be maybe more perspectives put into it, because this sounds like a major branding, marketing idea, which I think there's some great aspects to it, but I think that our town is more than just trails, and I know that not from my point of view, my world, there's a lot of the arts, and I just sort of feel like that, if we're gonna do a major, if this is how we're branding ourselves, we need to have more people in the conversation around that. I also would worry about people bypassing the downtown. I mean, I see my business's names on, but we haven't been talked to about that. So I think there's some good stuff in here, but I think it needs to be talked about more, talked about with more community partners. And I think also with some of our major institutions, I mean, NDU, BSC, Fairway, I mean, there's, I think there needs to be more before this is set in stone. And then the other thing is that I see, I see ATVs here listed as one of, the groups that would use some of these trails, and I'm wondering where and how, like, are we talking about on the state park? Are we talking on town property, and we're still figuring out that ordinance and what we want for a town that way. So there's just a lot. There's a lot of good, but there's also a lot of holes, I think, and a lot of things that could be contributed.
To Kyle's point, I was gonna bring up the point that $290,000, and this is not marketing, 70,000, which is still a lot of money, but if it was awarded, it should be made clear that it's not implied that this is the marketing campaign that the select board has approved. It's an idea.
The select board and the public, there'll be another opportunity and more opportunities for review and a more complete project. It is very useful to hear about some of the voices that want to be at the table and want to be in the conversation that we haven't reached yet. But it is not a fully fleshed out idea yet. This is something that we're continuing to work on. And I'd like kind of the board support to continue to move forward with this. Or if we've got a lot of concerns that we want to, that you want to hear kind of more immediately, I won't chop this one around until I can answer some of those questions, if that's the board's preference.
So what is the timing of this?
The particular one for Leahy's office is, I believe it's either this Friday or this coming Monday.
Okay.
But the recreation, the one that you have in front of you for the recreation program, as we've had a couple more discussions with folks from Leahy's office, and again, Casey's been instrumental in her assistance with this. This is not going to be a competitive application for them. So we're not taking.
The recreation isn't, or the industrial park? Isn't,
Recreation is not. The industrial park is a much better project.
Okay. So go ahead, Mark.
Well, because it looks like a big hunk of the recreation is the bridge.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's engineering.
I know.
And studying, that's not the bridge.
No, the bridge is.
Yeah, it's not actually any bridge.
No, but I mean, that's what I'm saying, the potential bridge.
Yeah.
The bridge is probably $2 million.
Yeah.
But 155,000 of your shopping around is the first step, and I'm not convinced I want the bridge yet.
I'm hearing there's not support for the rec plan for this Leahy grant.
I would be really remiss if I didn't say that I got a phone call from a Conservation Commission member who strongly argued that the Conservation Commission needs to be involved in the discussion about the town-owned property and the multi-use trails.
Yes.
I know that's on Brian's mind. He mentioned
They
it
wouldn't get a
for what it's worth, but yes.
Yeah. Conservation will be involved in that discussion. The stage for those multi-use trails that we're at right now is, is it even a possibility? we think that we have to go at least, maybe not all the way through the Act 250 process, but at least obtain permission to seek Act 250 approval from both the town and the village before we know what those trails are really going to look like. We've obtained permission from the town, and we're working on obtaining permission from the village. Once we have those permissions, plans for that will get a little bit more concrete. We'll invest a little bit more time in community partners and making it.
Well, not just plans, decisions on whether or not we move forward
Yeah.
at all. And if so, then plans.
Yeah, right now is this even a feasible project, or are we stopped before we even start? So there has not been a terribly significant amount of time invested in it at this stage.
Okay, so I'm hearing that folks are not totally on board with the rec plan at this point, Brian, but
Yep.
it sounds like in support of industrial park.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Go for it.
Okay. All right, next up, Brownfield alternate appointment. I do not believe that we actually made a motion to appoint anybody to serve as Doug's alternate on the Brownfield committee.
we have a motion.
Has there been any interest?
I think that at the time we held off because we were hoping that a trustee might be interested.
I would say that if we haven't posted, to our public forums for interest on this committee, we shouldn't appoint anybody.
I was the prior appointment. And it was kept in-house at the select board level between Doug and myself. Doug is no longer select board member, so we have opened this up to the general public. But it wasn't previously open to the general public.
I would be fine with seeking.
I'd be fine with it with one caveat, and the question is, do you have time, and is it something you're interested in?
It's something I'm interested in. I do have enough time to serve as Doug's alternate. The reason that it's useful to have an alternate for Doug is Doug's history as a property attorney. He has to recuse himself somewhat more often than other people might. But Doug is very familiar with the topics that are covered by the Brownfield committee, so he makes a good representative for us there. I think it's an interesting topic, and I don't mind serving on the occasion when he can.
Were you making a motion, Evan?
I motion we appoint Brian Story as Doug Moldy's alternate for the Brownfield committee.
Second.
There we go. Problem solved.
Any discussion? No? Okay. Eric's putting a check mark next to the agenda item. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Hi, you're watching me.
You're appointing him.
All those opposed, nay? All right, ayes have it.
So for the general public,
Congratulations, Brian.
Thanks.
for the general public, we'll have one executive session, potentially another one.
We will, I think, yes. So we're going to go into executive session for discussion on legal proceedings, which the town may be party. Would somebody like to make a motion?
My motion, premature general public knowledge regarding legal proceedings which the town may be party to would clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage because the board's discussion may dispute its position.
Is there a second?
So that's,
Second.
that would be in essence a finding that we would be.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Do we, I'm not at all sure even, can we, without giving away what the issue is, can we, I mean, I know nothing about it.
You'll find out in a second unless you want to
That'll be
oppose going
fine.
into executive session.
What's that?
Do you want to oppose going into executive session?
I'm just looking for a little bit,
Okay.
a tiny bit of information about what the purpose is, so that
I'm doing
I'm
this through the town.
confident
but I
that
can
premature
make
disclosure
an
will in fact
evening
put us
meeting.
at a disadvantage.
Your information could be that
Why don't we talk tomorrow?
Yeah,
I don't-
let's talk
okay,
tomorrow.
I just-
It was,
It's about a legal proceeding the town is involved in, I believe.
could potentially be.
How do we word this so that it tells what we're going into executive session for without stating the details?
So we wanted more than legal proceedings with the town may
Duncan
be a
wants
party.
clarification to confirm we should be
Just
going
a
into.
tiny bit of information about what the legal proceeding might entail.
So the legal proceedings is the disposition and let's just say that the disposition of
The second.
former employee.
No, we have a.
Do you want more than
Three
that?
ayes.
That's good.
But we,
We have 3 ayes on the floor. Would you like to vote aye?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes, we got Fuller.
Yeah, I'm in. I just,
You're on? Okay.
you
I
can't
just
go
need to
into
make sure.
executive session without some basis for it. And simply saying discussion of a legal matter, in my opinion, doesn't.
With this
Got it.
being the case, I motion that we enter into executive session to discuss legal proceedings as allowed by one VSA subsection 313A1.
Second. Is there a second?
oh, yeah,
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. And we are in executive session and. session at 9:02. Okay,
You wanted to go in to discuss
I believe we should.
the
Oh,
Duncan's point, we want to talk in more detail. We
I
want to give a
will,
little bit more detail, so I'd say something along the lines of,
I move that premature disclosure of the town's position.
we have this on last week's.
Do we?
we had something like it, but the town's position on the sale of the
On the
grader.
sale of the John Deere grader would place the town at substantial disadvantage.
Because it's a potential contract.
No.
Well, the potential sale would be, for example, if we wanted to discuss what's the least amount we'd be willing to accept. If we discuss that in public session, that would place the town at a disadvantage. To disclose that before negotiations of the sale of our existing grader had taken place.
Which assumes that we wouldn't make that public as a, if you're gonna go out, if you're gonna solicit invitations to bid and you've got a reserve, you would normally include what that minimum bid is in your,
But there's
Document.
further potential negotiation factors at play.
There's a motion on the floor. Is either a second and the motion dies?
can you make your motion again?
I motion that premature disclosure of the town's position on the sale of the John Deere grader will
For the town
put
of
the
its.
town at a substantial disadvantage.
I would second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
All those opposed, the ayes have it. Okay, we are in executive
Yeah.
session at
For
9:04.
reason,
Gonna need.
if so, that motion we
Second
enter
motion.
into executive session as allowed by VSA, is it 313, 381?
A1.
Okay, A1.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor,
I.
and we are in executive session at 9:05.
So
No action taken. I do have one last item, which is, are there any agenda items for our next meeting that anyone would like us to consider? We have a couple from our meeting today.
Right, we have some from tonight. That's all right.
No additional?
I have maybe two related to the agenda,
Okay,
the structure of the agenda. Right now, we have, I think at the very end of the agenda, we have select board issues, concerns.
yep,
And we can discuss this at a future meeting, but I'd like to talk about moving that to the beginning of the meeting rather than the end of the meeting.
okay,
And the other would be, I would love to see either the agenda or Brian's report reflect unfinished business, maybe would be the way, to old business or unfinished business. So we're kind of keeping track of the things that we haven't done that still need doing.
That sounds familiar.
Stop signs, Eric.
maybe that could just be a running list at the end, and when it's finished, like
Yep.
in your informational items, have a section for outstanding items, and we can just remove them as they're completed.
But it used to be there. I don't entirely remember the discussion all that well about removing it, but
Okay, but it
trying to
removed.
put it back in.
Excellent. Okay, sounds good. All right,
How long have we been doing that review of?
orders. We've been doing the review of orders for about 6 months.
6 months?
Maybe 6
We're gonna
ish.
continue to. keep
You're really
doing this?
bothered by that 15 minutes.
I am.
You don't have to show up for
Oh, I don't?
it. You can
Come
show up late. You did sign up for it.
Guilt doesn't work on me.
Say you don't have
Okay, I think we're meeting adjourned at 9:20, whatever it is. 4, 3. Bye, Eric. It's been real.
It's been real.
Yeah,
See you
enjoy
later.
your trip.
I will.